The Game Boy Advance was a fantastic console, and it was my first introduction to video games. I have so many fond memories of me and my brother playing the Pokemon games, the Mario games, and just anything that we could get our hands on for the GBA. But nothing comes close to the memory of Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion was my first introduction to the Metroid franchise. I still vividly remember walking up to a garage sale when I was about 10 years old, seeing a shoebox full of Game Boy games all listed for $5 a piece. I remember asking my dad to buy me a game and he agreed to it so long as I just picked one. I landed on Metroid Fusion, but not because I knew about the game or anything. I just thought that the sticker on the cartridge looked cool. But unlike many people, I didn't fall in love with Metroid right away. You see, I always got stuck in this exact part. Why? I'm not sure. I remember vividly restarting the game over and over and always playing up to this exact moment. Why not use the internet, you might be asking? Well, you see, this was around 2009 and my family just didn't have a PC or laptop. At the time, the internet and YouTube seemed like such a foreign concept to me. Now, I don't know what happened, but I ended up losing my copy of Fusion along with some other GBA games. Part of me thinks that they got stolen at school, but I'll never truly know. But you know a game is great when you come back to it years later, and come back to it I did. A few years later when I was in 8th grade, I finally got my hands on Metroid Fusion again, and this time, I fell in love with it. When it comes to game introductions, Metroid Fusion is one of the best ones. Set long after the events of Super Metroid, Samus is tasked with visiting the Metroid homeworld planet SR388 as a part of a research mission with the BSL. It is there where she gets attacked by a new enemy, the X Parasite. The parasite ends up invading her central nervous system and corrupts most of her power suit. Samus needs to go under very invasive surgery to remove the affected components, and with the help of some Metroid DNA, they are able to combat the X Parasite. You see, it turns out that the X had one natural predator, and that was the Metroids. It's pretty ironic that the one thing Samus set out to eradicate was the thing that ended up saving her life twice now. After the surgery, Samus is left in a very vulnerable state and has lost nearly all of her abilities. Now this is brilliant. While other entries just left it up to speculation or just had a silly reason for why Samus couldn't use her power-ups, I'm looking at you, Other M.
Bruh.
Metroid Fusion takes a fantastic approach and actually does something that seems real and actually makes sense. After the surgery, you could see some drastic changes in Samus's power suit. The once bulky, intimidating, and strong looking power suit is now only operating at 10% of its full strength. This new body is slimmer, weaker, and a husk of what it once was. And this just goes to show how dangerous the X Parasites really are. In a matter of minutes, they were almost able to eliminate one of the strongest bounty hunters in the whole universe. It's these little details that make this game so great. I could ramble on so much longer about how perfect the setup to this story is, but for now, I'll just leave it at this. Upon waking up, Samus is informed that her contaminated power suit parts were sent to the BSL station along with some specimens from SR388. We also find out about an explosion that happened at the station and are being sent there to investigate. From the moment of arrival, there is a feeling of unease. You can't quite pick it out, but there is some tension in the air. This feeling is then further solidified when talking to the computer. Everything from the tense music that plays to hearing it tell you to move quickly and quietly, reminding you that you are not as strong as you once were. Traversing through the BSL, you are met with silence. No scientists, no life forms, no enemies. Things are quiet. Almost too quiet. The only sound you hear is the sound of Samus's feet running through the empty hallways. It isn't until you reach the second navigation room that the silence ends and turns to a more suspenseful track, mentally preparing you for what's to come. When you arrive to the quarantine bay, you get to see a single horror node, which how many of you knew that that's what these things were called? I literally did not know that's what they were called until writing the script for this video. Anyways, this right here is some subtle foreshadowing of what's to come, because there is no way that a horror node could have wrecked the quarantine bay and caused this much damage. The thing that caused this is long gone, and to make matters worse, upon taking down the horror node, we get to see that it was actually an X Parasite, meaning that there are more around the station. After debriefing with the computer, it is then dropped on us that Samus is immune to the X Parasites due to the Metroid vaccine, making her the only possible person that could investigate the BSL. We then learn of a big life signature coming from another part of the sector and are tasked with going there and checking it out. The computer isn't afraid to tell Samus how weak she is at the moment, stating that there is only a 10% chance of survival. We are given missiles to increase those odds to 20%, and we make our way over to that new life signature. We take a detour to avoid faulty elevators, and this is where we encounter our first boss. This is another one of those cool, nice touches to the game. Almost all of the abilities you earn from defeating the bosses are things that the boss has the ability to do. Upon defeating it, we earn our first ability, in this case, the Morph Ball. Upon debriefing with Adam, the navigation room computer that reminded Samus of World Commander. Yeah, I forgot to mention that part. I feel like it's such an important aspect to this game that I just completely forgot to mention up to this point, but yeah, there it is. We learned that the X-Parasites have now invaded Sector 1, an environment meant to mimic SR-3D8, the Metroid homeworld. That is totally not suspicious. Anyways, Samus makes her way down the elevators, but not before paying her good old friend Ridley a visit. This part of the story is pretty cool because it isn't required for the story at this moment, and it just serves as a check-off gun. Matter of fact, we are actually encouraged to immediately leave the room due to the cold temperature that is causing damage, but if you come in and you stay there long enough, the camera will eventually pan and show a frozen Ridley. Pretty cool. Okay, back on task. We head back towards the quarantine bay and use our new Morph Ball ability to gain access to the elevators. Confident in our abilities, we make our way down to Sector 1, when all of a sudden... When I tell you that this scene gave me literal nightmares as a child, would you believe me? Like, this scene literally sent chills down my spine. From the moment we are introduced to the SAX, we see a quick shift in the music to something more ominous and eerie. Complete and utter silence. This is something that I absolutely love about this game, the way that it uses silence to invoke fear upon the player. It's just absolutely brilliant. This scene is very similar to Arrival at the BSL. Silence with nothing besides the sound of footsteps running through an empty hallway. Except this time, it's different. It feels more ominous and more creepy, especially when we get to see a close-up of the SAX and see its uncanny appearance. The SAX looks at us and stares us down, almost as if it's acknowledging our presence. This introduction also shows us how powerful the X really are. I mean, we knew that they were strong, but seeing them take over Samus's power suit and use his abilities is absolutely insane. This whole time we had been struggling to just open doors in our weakened state. Meanwhile, the SAX is able to blast right through them. We are no longer the predator that is going across the galaxy and slaying Metroids. From this instance moving forward, we are the prey. We enter Sector 1 and you will quickly notice how many more X-Parasites there are. They are spreading so quickly. We make our way over to the breeding stabilizers and destroy the parasites, which, by the way, did you know that this right here was a GameCube? It's a cool little Easter egg. We also have our second boss fight in this sector and acquire the charge beam. Metroid Fusion has some really cool and memorable bosses, but in my opinion, this one was just kind of filler. After clearing all of the stabilizers, we head back to the navigation room and we learn that the X have already spread across all sectors, with a big portion of them being in Sector 2. Our good friend Adam tells us to head over there, investigate, and eliminate any threat, forgetting that mere moments ago, our survival was only at about 20%. Upon arrival, we learn what caused the explosion in the quarantine bay, and it was actually our good old friend, the SAX. Using a power bomb, it was able to escape the bay and has been the root cause of everything that's going on in the BSL. The computer, Adam, quickly backtracks and lets us know that we stand no chance and to avoid it at all costs. The Galactic Federation decides to help us out and sends us a DLC pack to the nearest download station. The only issue is that it's behind a blue hatch which requires us to unlock. The unlock area isn't marked on our map, but we managed to find it rather easily. We make our way to the download, get access to our bombs, and at this point, everything is going smoothly. We unlock the door, we get our power up, everything is going to plan. But that does not last long. The game does not fail to remind you the threat that the SAX possesses. Upon exiting the download station, we hear a big explosion and see that our way back to leave the sector has now been compromised. This forces us to make our way through unmarked portions of the map until eventually we find our next boss. The Zazabi. This is a unique boss to Metroid Fusion which allows us to acquire the high jump and the morph ball jump. Again, I love the attention to detail with these bosses. If you look closely at its moveset, you could kinda guess what power up you would be getting upon defeating this boss. With our new power up in hand, we make our way back only to see another destroyed door. With nowhere to go, we use our bombs to escape to a different level of the sector. When one thing I love about Metroid games is how they utilize the environment and sound design to convey emotion. One thing I've mentioned a lot throughout this video when talking about the SAX is silence and how it's used to convey fear. This scene takes it one step further by putting us in Samus's shoes. At this point, you have to remember that this is the first time Samus has a close encounter with the SAX. Samus didn't see it going down the elevator to Sector 1. All Samus knew was what Adam was telling her, and seeing it this close is terrifying. The silence we hear is now coupled by this unexpected ominous sound, which reminds me of the sound something makes when it's coming at you, or like an anxiety attack of some sort. This is then paired with what sounds to me like a heartbeat, literally showing you the current mental state that Samus is in. I know I'm not the only one that when they first played this, they kind of froze for a second. But eventually, the SAX makes his way elsewhere and we are informed of the repercussions of opening up that blue hatch. It seems that opening up that door allowed the X parasites to infiltrate Sector 4, which housed a large specimen named Ceres. We make our way over and we have another pondering session in the elevator in which Samus asks herself if the SAX has any reason for its actions or if it's just a killing machine. This to me seems like a question, but also a self-reflection. You have to remember that the SAX is a mirrored copy of Samus, and Samus has done a lot of eliminating in the past. So I wonder if this is a way of her questioning if that's what she is, if she's just a heartless killing machine. We eventually arrive to Sector 4, and this is where we encounter my arch nemesis. No, not the SAX. This. The spot I always got stuck on as a kid.
Bruh.
Growing up, I didn't really like this sector, but nowadays it's one of my favorites due to its environment. Everything from the loose wires to the broken water containers that always remind me of that one fight Sasuke and Naruto had at that rooftop. Well, here we can see that the sector really has been getting torn apart. Eventually, we make our way over to the Ceres breeding tank, and we can see that it is long gone. All that remains is a pile of bones. This shows us two things. One, that something took out Ceres, and two, that whatever took it out is what's actually tearing up the sector. Surprise, surprise, it's an X-Parasite copy of Ceres. Who would have thought? This is such a cool boss fight though, and one of the first ones where I feel like that difficulty actually ramped up in my opinion, where you actually have to take your time and actually be precise, and it actually feels a little bit more difficult. After defeating Ceres, we get our next upgrade, the Speed Booster. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record at this point, but Samus is literally taking the abilities from the bosses, which is just super cool to me. Making our way to the navigation room, we find out that we're getting sent another DLC pack. Shout out to the Galactic Federation. This time we're getting super missiles. The only problem is that we do not have access to the previous data rooms, and the other ones require opening more security doors. Regardless, the Federation lets us know that they need us alive and send it to Sector 3, allowing us to open the next security doors to access that data room. This is a sector that has not yet been affected by the X-Parasite, and exploring it almost feels off. Something about this little portion reminds me so much of the starting point where we head to the quarantine bay. Things are quiet, almost too quiet. Eventually, we find our way over to the security door, and immediately upon unlocking it, the X invade the sector. Up to this point, we have been seeing just how much of a threat the X are. They are powerful, intelligent, and in case we had forgotten, they spread like wildfire. It really makes you think why the Federation is still keeping Samus here in the first place. Why not just destroy the BSL and get rid of the parasites? The only thing that I can think of is how costly it would be to restore the station and recover the research that was done. But is that really worth the risk that the X possess? Obviously, we know where this goes, but I do think this is a good spot where both Samus and the Federation are well aware of the threat. Okay, back to where we left off. Metroid Fusion was written and directed by Yoshio Sakamoto, and boy did he cook with this scene. You see, Samus could have just entered the sector and have it already been invaded by the X, but no. By doing it this way, it gives our choices significant weight. This is very similar to the beginning where we head to the quarantine bay and see that an explosion caused by an X-Parasite mimicking Samus caused the X-Parasites to escape. The key difference now is that by unlocking the security door, we are the ones that cause the X to infiltrate the sector. And that is the purpose of the silence leading up to that security door. This whole section is just absolute cinema. After unlocking the doors, we traverse the sector and find our way over to the data room and unlock super missiles. And yet again, we hear another explosion, and this time we can only assume it's the SAX. We leave the data center and notice that our way back is blocked off. Yet again, the doors have been blown up, and this time there's nowhere to hide. We make our way back to the data center and face our fear head on, except it's not the SAX, but rather a security robot. This is a pretty cool boss fight that allows us to test out our new super missiles. I also like how it encourages you to use diagonal aiming in order to land some cheeky hits. We don't end up destroying the robot, but we do force it to retreat and open up a way out for us. I really like this fight, not just for the encounter, but for what it symbolizes. This whole encounter was set to make you believe like you were going to encounter the SAX, except something felt different this time. There was no longer silence, just ominous music, building that anticipation of the confrontation that's eventually going to come. We are by all means nowhere near powerful enough to face the SAX, but this scene serves to build just a little bit of confidence and prepare us compared to our previous encounter. Once we arrive back to the navigation room, we hear word that the Federation is planning on dropping the next DLC pack, the Varia suit. And let me just say this right now, I love the Varia suit in this game. The design is just so cool. Like, I love the colors, the little oil spill pattern it's got going on. It's just such a cool suit in this game. There is just one little hiccup. The X-Parasites have destroyed every data room we have used. I almost wonder if the X-Parasites behave somewhat like a hive mind. They are definitely well aware of the threat Samus possesses, and they're doing everything that they can in order to stop her before she becomes way too powerful for them to handle. I tried confirming this, but I didn't find anything reputable online, so let me know what you think in the comments. Leaving the navigation room, we get to hear a secret conversation between the computer and presumably someone from the Galactic Federation. Now, I don't remember much from my English classes, but I do know that this is a fantastic way to build suspense, because up to this point, Samus has had no reason to be doubtful of the Federation's actions, but now, after seeing this conversation, we the player can definitely see that they have an ulterior motive, and all of a sudden, some of the things they're doing are starting to make sense. We make our way over to Sector 6 and we get informed that X-Parasites from Sector 5 have invaded. These X-Parasites are extra dangerous due to the fact that they have adapted to the cold and they're now actually able to harm us. As we make our way to the data room, we run into a few of these X-Parasites and we can instantly see much more aggression from them. Before, when you took down an enemy controlled by the parasites, you would see the X just kind of roam around before eventually being absorbed by Samus, but now that they have this advantage, they actively hunt you down. We continue making our way through the sector, making sure to avoid as many of these cold adapted parasites as possible, but as we keep getting deeper into the sector, we inevitably hit a dead end, and with no other option, we begin to look for another way out when all of a sudden, we hear a sound that's all too familiar. And suddenly, panic begins to set in. With no way to stand against it, we hide, making sure to not be seen. The SAX breaks through the wall, opening up a way out for us, and we manage to escape its grasp yet again. When we eventually do reach the data room, we notice that an X-Parasite is stealing our download code and taking our DLC with it. We follow the parasite and enter the next boss fight. This is another one of those boring and lazy bosses in my opinion. Like I said before, I love bosses that utilize the ability that Samus is able to learn after defeating them. But this one is just one big X core, which it's fine. It's not repetitive, but I would have loved to see something that used something relating to the Varia suit, like changing temperatures or something cool like that, you know? But as we already know, upon defeating it, we get our next power up. The Varia suit. And oh my god, dude, this suit looks so cool in this game. Checking in with Adam, he's just surprised that the X were able to steal our download code and get the Varia update. Having the Varia suit is a huge deal because now we at least stand a chance against the SAX. We might not have the firepower to damage it, but at least we stand a chance at fleeing now. Adam also tells us that the Federation has developed ice missiles because the ice beam would just not work anymore due to our genetic makeup. This is a small detail that I just find so fascinating and cool because Samus is at the point of no return. The Metroid vaccine has changed her down to the core, down to literally every single cell in her body, and although she might not realize it, she's slowly becoming the very thing that she sought out to destroy. We make our way over to Sector 5 and you know the drill. We check in with Adam, we make our way to the security room, we unlock level 3 doors, and then we make our way to the download station. As we exit the download station, we expect something to happen. Up to this point, something always went down as we left the download room, but this time, nothing happens. And this really just puts you on edge. For the past couple downloads we have received from the Federation, we've always had some sort of encounter with the X, but this time, there's nothing. I remember feeling on edge for the next few rooms until I found myself comfortably platforming using my new ice missiles. This feeling did not last long, however, because right as we near the end of the sector, this happens. We learn that something is happening with Sector 3 boiler cooling system. It is malfunctioning, and if it isn't fixed soon, the whole station might be destroyed. We get our typical Metroid franchise countdown and we head over to the boiler room to see what's actually going on. When we eventually do arrive, we get to see a scientist on a computer presumably attempting to activate the cooling systems. But as we approach closer, we get to see that it was actually an X mimicking the scientist. Upon defeating this X-Core, we unlock the wide beam and then immediately activate the cooling systems and save the station. Regrouping with Adam, we learn that the X have the ability to access memories of their prey, which is so terrifying to think about. Not only does the SAX have every ability Samus had in her prime, but it can also think like her, act like her, and most importantly, adapt like her, making her so utterly terrifying. Adam also drops this line, which in my opinion shows the Federation's true intentions when he says, "This could just be me reaching, but this really makes it seem like they are orchestrating a lot of the things happening on in the station to see how the X would react." Or it could just mean that they were observing from the sidelines. Who really knows? But I do find this very odd. Adam also mentions how it's strange that the parasites would do this, as destroying the station would also destroy them, implying that the threat that Samus possesses is worth risking their existence. One cool thing I didn't pick up on till writing the script for this video is how the scientist had only recently been infected. I wonder how he was able to stay clear of the X all this time. Adam lets us know that there's another life signature at the main deck, so we make our way over there to investigate. When we finally do arrive, we get to see it's our good friends from Super Metroid, which I got a bone to pick with you if you speedrun this game and you don't save the animals. Like, how can you leave these guys behind? Look at how cute they look. After all they've done for you and you leave them behind? Come on now. And this too goes for Adam, because look at the way he disses them when we report our findings. Although it is at this point that Adam confirms there is no one left on the station besides us and the parasites. To top it all off, the X-Parasites are evolving, with some of them already being immune to our current weaponry. And to help us out, we are getting the next DLC pack, Power Bombs. We head back to Sector 5 since that is one of the last ones with an available data room. We traverse through the sector and acquire the next DLC pack with nothing in our way but a looming shadow in the background. This portion of the game almost feels like a fever dream, but you have to be careful when it comes to dreams, otherwise you might end up with a nightmare. See what I did there?
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
As we check back in with Adam, we don't get our typical update on any X activity, or we don't hear anything regarding the Federation. Instead, we get one straightforward order instructing us to return to our ship. And as we leave the navigation room, we are yet again greeted by silence, with nothing but the sound of our footsteps filling the empty hallways, reminding us that we're here all alone with these intelligent parasites that continue to evolve and get stronger. As we ride the elevator up to the main deck, the power goes out, further solidifying that isolated and alone feeling. With no way out, we blast through the elevator and break into an unmarked portion of the main deck. The silence quickly fades and is replaced by that familiar, similar, suspenseful track that we heard when we originally were heading towards the quarantine bay. As we keep working our way through these portions, we eventually reach the main deck and are greeted by our good old friend, Ridley, who has been harvested by the X, foreshadowing something that's to come. When we arrive at our ship, Adam informs us that he instructed us back here to show us that our good friends from Super Metroid have now boarded our ship, which part of me believes that's the reason he called us, but part of me also thinks that he called us here for another reason, which I'll be getting into later. Adam then instructs us to head down to the silo to see what is going on and restore power to the elevators. We make our way down, and as we explore this area, we can see that it's full of roots and husks, similar to what we saw in Sector 2. As we head in deeper, we encounter my second favorite boss in the entire game, the Yakuza. Not only does this boss have such a cool design, but this fight ramps up the difficulty tremendously. The first phase is pretty simple and leads you to believe that this will be just another easy power up, but oh boy are you in for a treat. During the second phase, I hope you practice diagonal aiming because you're going to need it. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I failed this boss simply because of this phase. Oh yeah, and look at the way its head is bouncing around. Does that remind you of a certain thing Samus could do? Maybe an ability Samus can learn? Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but come on now. It's just such a sick fight. After defeating Yakuza, we earned the space jump and immediately utilized it to activate the auxiliary power systems. That solves one issue, but we still have to restore power to the main silo, and in order to do that, we gotta find the source of all these roots. We find a clearing through some of the routes that lead us to Sector 2, when we hear a sound that's all too familiar. Heavy footsteps, and suddenly, our heart begins to race. With nowhere to go, we have no other option but to face the SAX here and now. but thanks to our new ice missiles, we're able to freeze the SAX for a short time, allowing us to slip away. I don't know about you guys, but this part had my heart pounding. Before, every encounter we had with the SAX led us to be frozen in fear, but now we're forced to confront those fears head on, and we're actually the ones doing the freezing, and a little bit of dramatic irony in a way. As we keep on going through Sector 2, we have a run-in with the cause of all the roots, which is this Chozo statue looking boss. This boss is a lot easier when you compare it to Yakuza, but I still think this is such a well done boss, especially when you compare every other boss that we've gotten a bean from, which was literally just like a big X core. After defeating the Chozo and the X controlling it, we get our hands on the plasma beam, which Adam is super surprised about. If I remember what he said, we now have the firepower that can hurt the SAX, and at least now we can actually stand a chance. Regardless though, we're getting sent over to Sector 5 because something has been tearing it to shreds. When we arrive to the sector, we find out about the Nightmare, a military weapon created by the Federation that can control gravity. This thing is literally so cool. Going through the sector, you can see just how destructive it is. Windows shattered, floors broken, and the doors destroyed, all leading towards one small corridor. Following the path of destruction, a nightmare awaits. This is literally my favorite boss. The design, the concept, the whole lead up to it, the foreshadowing we had earlier, like everything about this boss is just done so well and executed so perfectly. From the beginning of the fight, the Nightmare begins to use gravity altering abilities which literally start to distort the room. Slowly but surely we apply damage until eventually its faceplate falls off, revealing the monster within. Now I don't know about you guys, but I can't help but think of that one art project with the robotic arm and the oil when thinking of the Nightmare. It just looks like it's in agony, so we end up putting it out of its misery, and with that, we unlock the gravity suit. Okay, look, I love Metroid Fusion and all, but this is exactly what I wanted with the Varia suit boss. Imagine the boss had the ability to change temperatures or something relating to the suit's ability like the Nightmare. This game does so many great things, but if I had a nitpick, then there you go. That's the one thing I'd change. Moving forward, we immediately put the gravity suit to good use when we enter Sector 4. I usually return to the Metroid games like every other year or so, and for some reason, I always get stuck on this part. I don't know, it's something about the water levels, man, I swear. Every game that has a water level, that's always where I get stuck on. After watching a guide and figuring out the next part, we stumble upon this little Easter egg to Super Metroid. And I just love the attention to detail by putting an upgrade up here. Another thing I noticed is these little guys. They look like a mini version of this boss from Super Metroid. Eventually, we stumble upon the level 4 security door, and without any clearance, we unlock it, allowing us to keep moving forward. Later, we stumble upon a data room, and with nowhere else to go, we go in there and surprisingly receive an unreleased DLC pack, the Diffusion missiles. Adam is just surprised about our new DLC, and even digs at us a bit for unlocking the level 4 hatch. Regardless, there are bigger fish to fry as we are being sent over to Sector 6 to finally take care of that security robot from earlier. The battle against the security robot is very similar to our first encounter, except this time it's just way more aggressive. Once we take it out though, we earn the wave beam ability, and let me just say this right now, this is my favorite beam upgrade in the entire game. Not even for the abilities you get from it, but just by the way it looks. Like the double helix DNA looking design is so cool. And with this new beam upgrade, we double back to that restricted area we saw earlier, and we hit Adam with the Miles Morales. I'm gonna do my own thing. As we sneak on in there and disobey his orders. And this is where we receive the biggest twist in the entire game, that the Federation is creating Metroids. Which we could already assume something fishy was going on since Sector 1 was literally created to replicate SR-388. This is probably what that secret conversation between Adam and the Federation was about. As we keep on moving through this restricted zone, we can see that they are also nurturing them and helping them go through their evolutionary stages, similar to what we saw in Metroid 2. As we encounter another breeding tank, we hear an explosion. We rush back as quick as we can, and we see the SAX using all of its firepower to destroy the Metroids before slowly being overwhelmed. This part of the game is just so important because it just shows how powerful the Metroids really are. The SAX has been an unstoppable force that has been hunting us throughout this entire game, and at this point, it is completely ignoring us, because compared to the Metroids, we aren't that big of a threat. The SAX causes so much damage to the zone that it begins to break down and it even falls off the sector, destroying the Metroids and the SAX along with it. And the first thing Adam tells us is that we shouldn't have disobeyed orders. Like, you are essentially creating bioweapons, and disobeying orders is the first thing you want to press us about. But it's for peaceful applications only, sure. Then we find out that the Federation's research uncovered ways for the Metroids to reach their final phase in literally days. Adam then says something that makes Samus finally break her silence. The X figured out the Federation's plan with the Metroids, and one of the SAX is on its way here. This, in my opinion, is the biggest twist in the game. I know I said earlier that the other twist was probably the biggest twist in the game, but no, in my opinion, this is the biggest one. This whole time, Samus was under the impression that it was just a single SAX causing all this damage and somehow tracking her through all of these sectors, when it turns out it was most likely a different SAX every encounter. Literally absolute cinema. Adam tells us to just leave the station and hopes that the Federation doesn't punish us too harshly for our insubordination. We start making our way back, and the enemies in this portion of the game are crazy strong. As we keep moving along, we eventually stumble upon another boss room. One of the core memories I have from playing this game when I first picked it back up in middle school is talking to my friends about what portion of the game I was at. And one vivid memory I have is of this guy named Frankie, who would always ask me if I had fought Ridley yet. This was my first Metroid game, so I didn't know who Ridley was, and I remember Frankie explained it as a boss that never dies and is in literally every Metroid game. And you know what? In a way, he's kinda right. But the difference is that the introduction he has in Metroid Fusion is just done so well. His remains were infected with the X, which then replicated him onto the boss we go on to fight. Like many things in this game, it just makes sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense is getting the screw attack from Ridley, but hey, this is still one of the coolest fights in the entire game. The screw attack is just so busted though, and that's why I'm pretty sure that the whole purpose of having those really strong X parasites leading up to Ridley was so that when you eventually acquire that screw attack, you will see just how strong that ability really is. As we enter the main deck navigation room, we are confronted by Adam as he instructs us to leave the BSL since the Federation is on their way to clean things up. This is where we get to hear Samus break her silence yet again and say what we have all been thinking this whole time. It is also revealed to us that the Federation cut off our future DLC packs in fear that we would grow too strong and be able to defeat the SAX. This is why they never told us that the diffusion missile data was ready, and why they never sent the plasma beam despite having completed it. The Federation aims to utilize the X for military purposes, which, can we all be for real, I have no idea how they even plan on controlling them. Theoretically, let's say they do succeed and capture them, then what? As soon as you deploy them anywhere, they will spread like the plague, and it will be literally impossible to contain them. Samus is the only one who understands this, being that she's the only one who is able to actually stand a chance against them, and yet despite this, they are still growing in numbers and multiplying across the entire station. And suddenly, all of the puzzle pieces start to click in. That secret conversation Adam had with the Federation, the fact that they were experimenting on Metroids, and the plan to capture these X parasites. The plan has always been to create a bioweapon. So that whole spiel about creating Metroids for peaceful purposes, we already know it's complete BS. Samus recognizes the real danger this possesses and aims to put a stop to it all by initiating your typical Metroid game self-destruct sequence. Except, she is trapped. Although she is willing to break orders, a computer can't. Its programming simply won't allow it to disobey orders even after understanding the real danger behind the Federation's decision. It isn't until Samus officially calls the computer Adam that we see a change in the computer's behavior, almost as if it's hesitating or having conflicting thoughts. I should note that I have been calling the computer Adam throughout this whole video, but this is the first time Samus officially mentions this name to the computer. The computer then asks Samus if this Adam was the type to just sit in a comfortable room and order her to die. Samus replies by saying he knew that some people must live and that some must die, that he even made that sacrifice once. This is such an important moment in the game because this is when this AI, a computer, begins to question its orders. By asking this question, it's looking to see if Adam was anything like the Federation, who are literally giving orders from the comfort of their own rooms while people run the risk of dying from following those specific orders. This response seems to trigger something within the AI as it starts to trust Samus's judgment. You have to remember that Samus has followed every order up to this point and is only now standing up against the Federation. This conversation persuades Adam to help Samus destroy the station, even telling her to send it to SR-388 to fully eliminate the X. This is such a critical moment for the series because it shows the importance of doing what's right for the better of the galaxy. Earlier in this video, I talked about the monologue Samus had on the elevator, where she questioned if the SAX was just a killing machine, and I mentioned how this could also be seen as Samus Samus, questioning what she has done throughout her whole bounty hunting career. This moment brings this back full circle as it shows that Samus still has her humanity and knows to disobey orders when it goes against her moral compass. And with that, we have our new orders. We are free from the Federation and are allowed to leave the navigation room, and for the first time this whole game, we feel a sense of relief. There is no suspenseful track, no silence, but a soft, uplifting track that just feels calm. This portion of the game reminds me so much of the final part of The Last of Us, right before taking Ellie to the hospital. The whole game had been one chaotic thing after another, but now that we're at the finish line, things feel still. And just like in The Last of Us, we can sit in this stillness until we are ready to face what's next. One of the great things that I love about this is how it doesn't tell us how to feel, but rather invokes those feelings through the use of sound. Think back to the encounters with the SAX and how the track gave us a sense of panic and anxiety. This track is the complete opposite as it makes you feel like everything will work out. For the first time throughout this whole game, we are completely free from the Federation's orders and free to explore the BSL. When we do decide to head to the observation deck, that stillness fades as we have our faded confrontation with the SAX. However, things are different this time. There is no panic, no anxiety, just a clear goal to finish this thing off and complete our mission. As the fight starts, it might seem like your typical mirror match. The SAX is a copy of Samus, her at full power, with all of her abilities, yet it lacks her humanity, restraint, and morality. A symbol of what she could have been if she just blindly followed Federation orders. As the fight goes on and the SAX takes damage, it begins to shift and transform into a monster, showing that even though X-Parasites have the power to mimic their prey, that's all they are, a copy, whose only purpose is to spread. From the beginning of the game, we saw Samus lose all of her abilities, her suit, and almost her life. We witnessed as her contaminated power suit, a representation of what she used to be, hunt her down relentlessly. This fight isn't just Samus defeating a contaminated power suit controlled by the X, it's her destroying the Federation's immoral commands. It's about Samus confronting her old self and embracing the change within her, literally fusing with Metroids, no pun intended, to stop this universal threat. Except that things turn out a little different. After we defeat the SAX, its core finds a way to escape and avoid being absorbed. But as I've stated before, Samus is only focused on her mission and doesn't really care for any additional power. She heads to the control room and sets the BSL on its course to SR-388. We get our second typical Metroid countdown and we rush to the ship, except that when we arrive, there is no ship, but rather a destroyed room and one giant Metroid shell. As we approach to investigate it, we are attacked by an Omega Metroid, the final and strongest Metroid evolution. With one swipe, this Metroid brings Samus to her knees, but before the Omega has another chance to strike, the SAX appears once more and takes on the fight. It uses its Ice Beam and inflicts a little bit of damage before suffering the same fate as Samus. Without hesitation, Samus jumps and absorbs the core and regains the Ice Beam ability, something that we thought was incompatible with the new suit. With this new beam upgrade, we make quick work of the Omega before getting picked up by our ship and escaping the BSL. Many people have speculated that the SAX decided to turn a new leaf and help Samus out, but you have to remember that in the eyes of the X-Parasite, the biggest threat is the Metroids. Going back to the restrictive zone, the SAX could have fought us there and possibly eliminated us, but it completely ignored us because compared to Metroids, we aren't that big of a threat. The Chozo literally created Metroids to combat the X-Parasites. They are literally designed for this purpose. So I don't think the SAX is turning a new leaf here. I just think it thinks that by helping Samus take this Metroid down, other X-Parasites will have a chance to live on and spread. You have to remember that this was just one of many SAX in the station. So even though we have a chance to get more powerful, so long as they keep spreading, they have the advantage. And that concludes Metroid Fusion. Overall, Metroid Fusion is one of the best Metroid games in my opinion. It was more linear than previous titles, and while some dislike this, I think this is one of its strong points. It was a big change for the series, but without that linearity, the storytelling and world building simply wouldn't have worked the way it does. The huge payoff we had at the end simply wouldn't have worked if we had full ability to explore every sector. The devs even went the extra mile by making sure you couldn't sequence break the game like previous titles. There's even a cool Easter egg if you manage to sequence break before the fusion missiles. This game was made with so much thought and consideration, and this is precisely why I decided to make this super long video on it. If you enjoyed watching me ramble about Metroid Fusion, consider subscribing, and feel free to let me know your favorite things about Metroid Fusion in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll be posting more content in the near future, so I'll see you guys then.